Hello everybody! Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome back to the next episode of Let's Talk Anime. And at this point, it's probably super late making a video like this, but in today's video, I'm going to be discussing what anime that I'm watching for this summer 2018 season. I'm not expecting this video to be too long because there's honestly not a lot that I am watching consistently this season. There were a couple that I watched that I just couldn't get into, just personally. But unlike the last video that I made, I'm not going to be covering Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! Brains, Black Clover, any shows that are like that are continuing from a previous season, My Hero Academia included. So to begin this video, I'm going to be discussing Cells at Work, or Harataka Saibo. I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically, an easy way to explain this anime is that Cartoon Network show, Kids WB, whichever channel it was on, it might have been both, Osmosis Jones, just take that cartoon and make it anime. Basically, they personify different parts of the body like white blood cells, red blood cells, and viruses, and basically make it a virus of the week sort of thing, where main characters take on the virus, stuff like that. And honestly, I really like the show. I know that it's more or less trying to be educational with just like, here's this virus, here's how it functions, and stuff like that. But honestly, even just taking that and putting that aside, it's still really enjoyable. The characters have very distinct personalities. Every single episode, while it is still a sort of the virus slash monster of the week sort of thing, it's still fun to watch because for stuff like sore throats and laryngitis, stuff like that are more common illnesses, it's fun to see how they take some of these viruses and incorporate them into the show. Next is Asobi Asobase, and I'm honestly surprised that I was able to say that first time without any stumbles. But honestly, and I hope I'm not saying this too presumptuously because I don't remember off the top of my head what else I'm watching from this season, but I think this is my favorite one of this season. Basically, it stars a group of 3 girls, one of them who sucks at English, one of them who everybody thinks is from the USA, but actually isn't because of weird circumstances or whatever, and the other one's just the weirdo? I don't know exactly how to word it. I hope I'm not being mean to anybody that worked on the show by calling one of the characters a weirdo, but to be fair, they're all kind of strange in their own way. Basically, in a way to put it, it's like Daily Lives of High School Boys. Instead of focusing on 3 boys, it focuses on 3 girls. Which is actually funny because Daily Lives of High School Boys did kind of do that concept because they incorporated 3 opposite gendered characters later on into the show, so I find that kind of interesting, but it is different enough that I still enjoy it. And at least they explain it in a way that's somewhat logical because I think everybody in the main cast is from an all-girls school or something like that. I think that's how it is. At least that's how it's working in my mind right now. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But obviously with Asobi Asobase, it's basically a comedy. It's obviously a comedy. It's not meant to push anything forward. And honestly, one of the draws that I decided to watch the show for was because it was done by Studio Lurch. And if I'm not mistaken, they also did Gakko Gurashi. At least if it's not that, it's another darker anime that I watched. And that's one of the reasons that I wanted to pick it, because I was thinking, okay, it's gonna be like Gakko Gurashi, soft, warm, fluffy on the outside, but dark and gritty on the inside. But since I've watched through at least 6 or 7 episodes at the moment, that's probably not the direction it's going. But regardless, I still love this show, and I feel like it should definitely hold some merit that I'm calling this my favorite anime of the season, even though I haven't even gone halfway through this video yet. Next is High Score Girl, and honestly, this is the one that I'm more or less half and half about, I guess, in a way to put it. But basically, the early premise of the show is the main character, Haruho? I think it's Haruho, is basically a whiz at playing video games. And then he meets, I can't remember her name. She's on the very cover of the key visual, and I can't remember her name. She's got a purple dress on, kind of darkish hair. She doesn't talk much. She's basically better at video games than he is, and that's where the rivalry starts. Although I'm not really sure if you can call it a rivalry because she's so much better at video games than he is. Although one thing I feel like I need to mention, first of all, spoilers ahead. If you're interested in watching High Score Girl, or if you're not caught up on it, then feel free to skip ahead because I'm going to be spoiling a little bit of the show for a second. I was a bit surprised when they mentioned that the female lead ended up moving, because it was only like 2-3 episodes into the series, and I was thinking, oh, it's just gonna be one of those things where she moves, but then she comes back, which might still be the case, but it seems like at the moment it's permanent because it's been a couple of episodes and she's only been mentioned. Okay, spoiler over. One of the things I like about the show is the video games. Obviously, with a title like High Score Girl, you can expect video games to be present, and it definitely is. They don't even shy away of mentioning video games like Street Fighter, for example, which seems to be a very prominent thing with this show, which kind of makes me wonder, did Street Fighter somehow sponsor this anime? I know that Square Enix has a part in the show as well, but just sort of wondering. The one thing that I'm going to mention before I move on to the next one is the 3D, or more or less kind of 3D CGI sort of style for the show is kind of weird, not gonna lie, but it's not too bad, I guess, to put it. Obviously I've gotten used to it because I've watched at least 5 or 6 episodes right now, but it was kind of weird at first because I didn't expect that, especially because a lot of anime that I've watched don't even have anything like CGI or anything like that. But just as a little bit of a foreshadow before you go into it, just know that it's gonna look a bit weird at first, but I got used to it at least. Obviously that's not for everybody, but just it's a little bit of a comfort. It was weird for me at first as well. Next up is Hanebado, and it's actually a funny story. I swear, not each one of these is going to start with a story, but this one actually is. I'm pretty sure anywhere that you look online, Hanebado, one of the genres is sports. And for the longest time, I have never been a fan of sports anime. This is like the first one that I have even watched. But I heard a lot of people talking about it, so I decided to give it a chance. And oh my gosh, I was hooked by episode 1. To start, the visuals, everything with the show, it all looks so crisp. And it definitely has to be, because the show is about badminton, of all sports, for whatever reason. And the game can be super fast at times, so you gotta have animation to step up to that. Next thing to mention, and honestly probably one of the only other things I need to mention, the opening. Just search up Hanebado opening on YouTube, and just listen to it and tell me it is not spectacular. And spectacular isn't even a word that I throw around a lot of the time, so that definitely holds some merit that I'm calling this spectacular. Between the animation, the song, and one part that I absolutely love from the opening is when Hanasaki is walking over to the net, and it just shows different scenes of all of the different characters, and for some reason that scene always just gets me. That scene just gives me so many chills, and I don't even know why. I guess I should talk about the story of Hanebado while I'm at it. The story's not too bad. I feel like in some sense of the word it does have some generic elements to it, but it's still fun to watch. And it's actually funny because I feel like I've mentioned this at least a couple of times in previous videos, that I'm sometimes not good with names in anime, which is definitely apparent when I was talking about High Score Girl. But with Hanebado, the characters are at least some form of memorable. Like, I was able to just list off Hanasaki's name and what she looks like in my head right off the bat. Unfortunately, I can't even remember the character that's on the cover at the moment, but I guess what I'm trying to say is the designs of the characters in the show are at least so stand out, even with anime, because I can just picture what the characters look like in my head, because the art style is at least different for me. And of course, I haven't watched every single anime, so I'm sure that there's something out there that looks similar, but it looks different to me, at least. Next anime that I'm going to be talking about is Muhyo and Roji's Bureau of Supernatural Investigation. Now, I feel like this one would either be tied, or at least in second, to Asobi Asobase as my favorite of the season. Basically, the premise of the show is the two title characters, Muhyo and Roji, are basically in charge of supernatural investigations. They take on stuff like demons, probably vampires, basically how to keep a mummy from a few seasons ago, but edgier. Like Cells at Work, it has that monster of the day sort of vibe, but I really like it. And honestly, I think the reason that I like it is because how much it surprised me. Because going into it, I was just thinking this was going to be an unassuming show with the art style looking sort of childish. I didn't really expect much from it, but the first episode definitely changed my mind on that. The fact that the first episode's premise is this girl goes to them to take care of this supernatural being because her friend and her drifted apart and she accidentally got shoved onto the train tracks and died. That is intense. And I remember while I was watching that episode, I was thinking to myself, there's no way they're gonna do that. There's no way, because all the pieces were being set up in a way that I figured was going to be the conclusion. But still, I was thinking, there's no way that's going to happen. And lo and behold, it happened. But again, I feel like Muhyo and Roji are just my favorite based off of how it surprised me. Last up is Chiyo's School Road. And would you look at that, there's a story with this one too. Just like a lot of the anime from this season, they decide to have the premise of the show in their title. I know a lot of anime do that, calm down, I'm aware. But basically, Chiyo's School Road is, Chiyo is the main character. She's trying to get to school, and she's walking on the road. Seems logical, right? But the conflict in the show rises up when Chiyo gets sucked into these weird circumstances on her way to school that are basically roadblocks. Get it? Roadblocks? Because she's on the road? I'll see myself out. But this one was one of the more controversial anime for me. Because at first, I was watching the first episode and I was thinking, okay, this is kind of funny, but I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Because the main draw of the show is it's trying to relate to those people that are always tardy for everything or something to that effect. I'm sure that's not the only grab, but that's what I got from it. And for somebody like me, I've very rarely been tardy to anything. So that was kind of one thing that was just not really grabbing me at first, or at least making me relate to the characters. But after my friend talked about how good the show is and said, hey, you might like this show, I decided to give it a second chance in the dub actually, and I really liked it. Now obviously there are way more anime that are coming out this season than I've discussed, but those are the ones that I've watched. Let me know what anime you've watched from this season down in the comment section below. And if there's one that you absolutely love from this season that you think I should check out, make sure to let me know. If you have any suggestions for Let's Talk Anime discussions, leave them down in the comment section. And I will see you in the next episode. Momentai.